London, 1738. He stood in front of Parliament, gaunt and weather-worn, holding a small wooden box. Inside it, a human ear, his own, severed by Spanish sailors. "Here," Robert Jenkins is said to have declared, raising the relic of violence for all to see, "This is the honor of Britain." Whether this exact moment played out as dramatically as later retellings suggest is uncertain. But the artifact was real, and so was the outrage. Jenkins, a British sea captain, had reportedly been assaulted by Spanish coast guards off the coast of Havana in 1731. Accused of smuggling, Jenkins was tied to a mast and had his ear cut off. He later claimed a Spanish officer told him, "Tell your king we do the same to pirates." It was not until 1738 that Jenkins re-entered public life, his ear preserved and presented before the British Parliament as evidence of Spanish cruelty. His story struck a nerve. Britain, long at odds with Spain over colonial trade, seized the moment. Within a year, Britain declared war on Spain. Its name, the War of Jenkins Ear. But behind the headlines and patriotic fervor was something else: ambition, commerce, ego. The war was not really about an ear. It was about sugar, slaves, and shipping lanes. Tolstoy, in War and Peace, might have called this moment a historical necessity disguised as accident. For him, history does not pivot on dramatic moments alone, but unfolds from deeper, impersonal causes beneath the surface of events. The movements of humanity are determined not by individual will, but by the aggregate of countless wills. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. To say a war was fought over an ear is to mistake spark for substance. The deeper causes of the war were geopolitical and economic. Britain coveted access to Spanish markets in the Caribbean. Spanish coast guards, acting under pressure to curb smuggling, clashed frequently with British merchants. The South Sea Company, a British trading enterprise with stakes in the region, lobbied aggressively for conflict. Parliament, eager to placate public outrage and assert national honor, obliged. Jenkins' Ear was a convenient fiction, a story simple enough for the masses to believe and powerful enough for Parliament to weaponize. And in that story lies a deeper truth about war. It often needs only the appearance of justification. It is rarely started by those who must die for it. Tolstoy, writing in the shadow of Napoleon, understood this. In War and Peace, he dismantles the myth that history is shaped by singular leaders. Instead, he describes history as the sum of human inertia, a tide of fears, desires, and false certainties. "A king is history's slave," he wrote, resisting the cult of personality that drives conventional history. In the case of Jenkins' Ear, it was not the captain, nor the Spanish Coast Guard, nor even the Prime Minister who started the war. It was the machinery of empire, moving forward under the weight of its own logic, not unlike the way Napoleon is portrayed, not as a genius, but as a man riding the crest of a wave he did not create. Spring 1741. Cartagena de Indias, a fortified city on the Caribbean coast of present-day Colombia, became the crucible of imperial ambition. Britain launched one of the largest naval expeditions in its history, over 180 ships and nearly 30,000 men, under the command of Admiral Edward Vernon. Their objective was to seize Cartagena from Spain and establish British dominance in the Caribbean. They believed victory was inevitable. They were wrong. The Spanish defense, led by the crippled but brilliant Admiral Blas de Lezo, one-eyed, one-armed, and one-legged, was relentless. But the true enemy of the British was disease. Yellow fever, malaria, and dysentery ravaged their ranks. More than 10,000 British troops perished, not in battle, but in swamps and sick bays. Cartagena was a catastrophe. The British fleet limped home, its dreams of conquest drowned in tropical mud. And yet the war continued. In War and Peace, Tolstoy strips war of its glory. Battlefields are not epic stages, but chaotic, meaningless terrains. Soldiers don't die for ideals. They die from mud, confusion, and miscalculation. Cartagena, in all its grim absurdity, could have been lifted straight from Tolstoy's depiction of Borodino. The strongest of all warriors are these two: time and patience. Leo Tolstoy. War is not just destruction. It is also theater. It requires symbols, scripts, and scenery. The War over Jenkins Ear was a pageant of imperial pride. It allowed politicians to pose as patriots, merchants to secure monopolies, and newspapers to stoke fervor. It gave the British people a narrative in which they were victims and therefore justified in their aggression. But symbols have a cost. Behind every cannonball fired in the name of honor lies a ship of broken bodies. The soldiers who died at Cartagena did not care about trade policy. They were sons and brothers, not shareholders. Tolstoy's War and Peace is filled with characters who wake from the dream of glory to the reality of suffering. Pierre, caught in the chaos of war, wonders whether anyone really understands what they are fighting for. Prince Andrei dreams of heroic sacrifice, but finds only senseless pain. Natasha is swept into patriotic fervor, only to be shattered by personal loss. War seduces through meaning. It reveals its truth only in ruin. The story of Jenkins Ear is not unique. In 1325, a war broke out between the Italian city-states of Modena and Bologna over a stolen wooden bucket. In 1859, a pig's death triggered a military standoff between the US and Britain. In 1914, a single assassination led to World War I. What connects these incidents is not the absurdity of their triggers, but the machinery they set in motion. Each became the excuse for deeper tensions to explode. Tolstoy warned that history is never so tidy. He rejected the idea that wars begin because of one event, one villain, or one cause. They are, in his view, like storms, the final expression of countless atmospheric pressures that no single act can fully explain. Today, we still live under the shadow of symbolic conflict. A drone strike, a disputed map, a nationalist speech, these can spiral into catastrophe. The tools have changed, the logic has not. Tolstoy invites us to see through the symbols, to recognize that the real enemy is not the other nation, but the cycle itself, the willingness to accept war as destiny. He invites us to become historians of our own motives. There is no greatness where there is not simplicity, goodness, and truth. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. And so we must ask, what is it in human nature that finds comfort in conflict? It is perhaps not hatred that drives history's wars, but fear. The fear of losing status, pride, power, the fear of appearing weak. In such moments, symbols become shields, and narratives become weapons. The ear, the bucket, the pig, all illusions we clutch to avoid facing the deeper truths. Tolstoy compels us to look inward. He suggests that war is not born only in courts and parliaments, but in the hearts of individuals who choose pride over understanding. In War and Peace, true courage is not shown by the saber, but by the soul. Pierre's transformation is not through conquest, but compassion. Prince Andrei finds peace not in victory, but in humility before death. We are told peace is fragile, but in truth, it is war that is the brittle thing, dependent on illusion, on performance, on the continuous feeding of hatred. Peace requires something harder. honest introspection, the willingness to question inherited beliefs, the bravery to say, "I was wrong." Let history's absurdities not be repeated. Let Jenkins' Ear remain a relic of shame, not inspiration. And let us understand that no cause, however gilded in honor, is worth the burial of truth. Because the true battlefield is not the land we fight over. It is the mind that chooses to fight. The ear of Robert Jenkins is long gone, lost to time, perhaps dust. Yet the idea it embodied survives, that nations will kill for pride, so long as pride wears the mask of principle. Tolstoy understood that history rarely turns on singular events. It turns quietly, imperceptibly, on the thoughts we do not challenge, the stories we accept too easily. There is no lasting peace in flags or victories, only in the minds that choose reflection over fury. Cartagena is not just a place, it is a warning. If we remember it, not as triumph or tragedy, but as theater mistaken for truth, we might step back from future cliffs. And if we speak not in the voice of vengeance, but in the quiet tones of clarity, perhaps then, and only then, will peace cease to be a pause between wars.